dinosaurs, I guess what we can start on is tell me about the T-Rex behind you.
All right. Well, this is a cast of the T-Rex that was found in Fort Peck, Montana, formerly known as Fort Peck T-Rex, now called Montana's T-Rex, because when Montana gave a T-Rex to the Smithsonian, they named theirs America's T-Rex, and Montana felt like they had to call theirs Montana's T-Rex to make up for it. It's one of the more complete T-Rex skeletons. It's 38 feet long. Depending on how you count the bones, it's anywhere from 60 to 75% complete.
Mm-hmm. Is this one just a cast of the original model of the original bones?
Yeah. So this is a cast. They took each individual bone, they made a silicone mold of it, and they poured a cast of each individual bone, and then that's what we got. And then we assembled the skeleton right here at the museum.
I always like when people find out that a lot of museum pieces like that are casts.
Yeah.
And they try to develop a conspiracy theory around it.
Oh yeah.
About the dinosaurs aren't real. Things like that. I'm like, no, there's just the way they do it. I mean, it's like pictures of art.
Well, yeah, like if you go to the Field Museum in Chicago, Sue, complete T-Rex skeleton, but the head on Sue's body is a cast, and then Sue's actual head is like 30 feet away because it's just too heavy to mount. By the time you would mount it as a fossil up on where it's supposed to be, you'd have more in structure holding it up than the actual bone.
You just have scaffolding holding the head up.
Oh yeah.
Plus, why would you want something like that to be at the mercy of gravity? A T-Rex skeleton.
And one of the things with Sue when they mounted it was they wanted it to be able to have parts removed to study, including the skull. And they do that. They'll take parts out and study those and then put them back. And I'm assuming they must have a copy of all of the individual bones in the skeleton too, so that if they take something out, they put a cast in just to fill it in temporarily. It's
like those Fabergé eggs, the heist movies where they always hide the fake one in the case and take the real one.
Yep.
Yeah, I can't remember that paleontologist that was on Rogan that was so fired up about the dinosaurs aren't real thing. I wish I could think of that. I had to look at it. Big old guy wears a hockey jersey all the time. I have to send that to you. So,
yeah, we have. I think we're up to 6 display cases full of actual dinosaur bones that we have dug up. So we've got plenty of real bones, even if the full T-Rex skeleton behind us isn't a real one.
Now, I hope I don't air this episode close to the last paleontologist I had on, but we got in this whole discussion, and it just about dinosaurs in the southeast, like where we're at, because we're like, me and you are right now, like 50 miles apart at most, and like what dinosaurs were around here. Like I know the age of the the Smokies and everything are older than dinosaurs actually were. What fossil? Because I'm in Alabama, and it's the most dinosaur rich state. Either something like in the South, is it? I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah, in the South. Well, I mean, it depends if you count Texas in the South or not.
I kind of do.
Yeah, Texas has some pretty good finds too. But no, Alabama has some really good finds. Appalachiosaurus, which was kind of a T-Rex distant ancestor, found in Alabama. Love to get a cast of one of those guys too, because they're pretty cool looking animals. Hadrosaurs have been found. There's been some just scant traces of the ceratopsians, relatives of Triceratops. A couple of teeth have been found, a couple isolated bones that they think might be from them. We have, at our museum here, we have a Tennessee dinosaur bone.
Really?
Yeah, that's pretty unusual.
That's what I was thinking. Like, where's that from?
It's from the Coon Creek Formation, which is in southwest Tennessee. But the Coon Creek Formation is marine deposits. We were mostly underwater at that time. And so we find all kinds of sea animals, the mosasaurs, which, pretty cool animals. Big sea turtles, lots of clamshells, ammonites, things like that. But occasionally, you do get dinosaurs that died close enough to the water that they got washed out to sea, and then they get buried with the marine stuff. And that's what happened here.
Mm-hmm.
Is we had a hadrosaur dinosaur, one of the duck-billed dinosaurs, must have died, washed out to sea, and was buried in the marine deposits of the Coon Creek Formation.
Oh yeah, I guess that's what Mike Payne was talking about. He said they got washed out to sea, and that's where you find a lot of your southern dinosaurs. Okay, that's what he meant. I thought he meant like they were in the Atlantic Ocean. They found them. He meant sea as in the sea as it was then.
Right. Yeah, the inland sea that covered, half of Texas, most of Mississippi, a little bit of Alabama.
Mm-hmm. Definitely covered up here where I'm at because I grew up on the side of a mountain, and I would always get my little fossil kit and go up in the mountains and find clumps of clams and fish, and the stacks of nickels. You know, I'm talking the
crinoids.
Yeah, crinoids. Can't think. Yeah. I have to ask every time. I forget what they're called, but they're everywhere.
Yeah. But speaking of dinosaurs that washed out to sea, up in Canada, they found an ankylosaur, one of the big armored dinosaurs that is almost perfectly preserved. I mean, you can see its skin. It's fully, 3D and is in almost perfect condition. That's what happened to that one, is it washed out to sea and it got buried in marine deposits. And for some reason, that just happened to preserve it just unbelievably well.
So it was ankylosaur?
Yeah, they gave it a new name. I think that's the one that's called Zool.
Holy Zool.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool to find. By the way, does my mic sound okay? I didn't ask before we started.
Does your mic? Yeah, your mic sounds fine to me.
Okay. I have to do this I forget because I get so excited to start. And oh man, I forgot to do a sound check.
Yeah, well.
I want to name it a Kylosaur Zool. Those things are like tanks.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to find some ankylosaur material. We got, I think I've got one ankylosaur tooth. And we had a couple bones that we thought might be ankylosaur, but as we've kind of gotten them all the way cleaned up and started to research it a little bit, starting to look like maybe, no, just another triceratops.
There's always a triceratops.
Yeah.
Them and hadrosaurs, all you ever find everywhere.
Yeah.
Now, do you go out west and do a lot of digs, or you just hang around the museum mostly nowadays?
So I will not give up my one trip to Montana every year. I started doing that long before there was a museum. I think it was 2009 or 2010 when I went out for the first time. And I vowed that I will not miss a summer and I will go to Montana for the rest of my life. And I've still been able to do that, even though I'm running the museum down. It kind of has become the only trip I get out every year, but I actually just got back 3 days ago from this year's trip to Montana.
It's a good time to be in Montana right now.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I always tell people, 90 degrees in Montana is nothing like 90 degrees in the South. 90 degrees in Montana is comfortable. You can work all day. It drops into the upper 50s at night. It's beautiful.
It is an odd combination. I didn't know what to expect. I thought it was just going to be like, I guess being like where we're at, just then it's woodsy but open. Maybe I didn't realize it was an actual desert.
Yeah,
that was just a slightly greener desert, as all Montana is, with rattlesnakes everywhere.
Vast majorities of it are very, very dry. Yeah, we probably average seeing a rattlesnake once every other year. They're not that common.
Oh, really? Yeah, they were. It may have been, when people move down here who aren't usually used to the more rural aspects of the South, it may have been something like that because it was a bartender that was telling us about how they were so scared of rattlesnakes being everywhere. So she might have been from who knows where that didn't have any snakes at all.
Well, the rattlesnakes out there are half the size of the rattlesnakes here.
Mm-hmm. Those little ones. I mean, like a foot long?
Yeah.
At the most?
Foot and a half, yeah.
Those are almost more dangerous. It's like a little copperhead. They always get you.
Yeah.
They're the more, but so you just, that's the only dig you do every year is that one?
Yeah. Well, not always. I mean, this year I did. I actually get to spend a week out in Wyoming. Michael Payne with Paleo
Hmm.
Prospectors invited me out to help him work on a site that he had found the previous year, and then just to hang out because uh, he's one of the people I've known since I started digging, and I'm always happy to go hang out with him and get to go play in the dirt.
Hmm. When I first found out about his service that he worked for, Paleo Prospectors, I was like, how did that elude me all these years? That's the
Yeah,
coolest thing in the world.
yeah, them, and there's a few other groups that do that, and yeah, you just get to go, and they will take you out and show you how to hunt for fossils and help you dig up the fossils, and a lot of times you get to keep a lot of what you find
Hmm.
too.
I think he was going through the stipulations of that you get to keep what you find unless it's like a new discovery.
Yeah, if it's scientifically
Yeah.
important, it will go to a museum. If it is something that is above a certain dollar value, you may have to pay more if you want to keep it, um, because the ranch owner, also wants to be able to make a little money, and so if they sell something or
Hmm.
you pay a little extra for something, that goes back to the rancher. Helps keep. I mean, that's the hardest thing out there in Montana is finding a place to be able to go. I was
Hmm.
lucky enough to get on the ranch that I go to in Montana. Um, I was invited to go on a dig, and the person who invited me out, the way he was actually able to get onto the dig was through Make a Wish. Make a Wish had contacted this paleontologist, and um, they had a boy who wanted to dig dinosaurs in the Hell Creek Formation for his wish. And so this guy was looking for a place to go. The ranch owner heard about it, said, "Bring him here. We'll do it. We've got dinosaur bones." And then, yeah, I got to help out on the last Make a Wish that they did on the ranch. So amazing experience, but just, you know, have been able to develop a really good relationship with the ranch owner over the past
Hmm.
14, 15 years. And it's pretty lucky because I'm sure Michael Payne can tell you some stories about one little mess up and they've been thrown off ranches and may not even have
Hmm.
been anything they did. But ranch owners are very picky about who they let on their properties.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that being a factor. It's just kind of like getting permission to hunt somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, very much.
I couldn't imagine like just, hey, can I dig for triceratops on your land? Like what?
Yeah,
It's got to be like what would be the benefit for a ranch owner? Could they make? I mean, they make money off of it,
right. Yeah.
just a
So
little bit.
if groups like paleo prospectors go, then everybody who paleo prospectors takes out is paying a fee to go dig, and some of that fee goes to the rancher, and
Mm.
so the rancher gets paid per person. And then, like I said, if it's something very valuable, like say an entire triceratops skeleton, then that will probably end up being sold to a museum, and then part of that money will go back to the rancher as well.
What would that be worth? Like if somebody found a whole triceratops.
I don't know, but I'm guessing probably in the hundreds of thousands.
Okay, like in your mind, you think triceratops maybe like 10 million, 1 million, 2 million. I
The
don't.
the thing is, triceratops are so common though.
Yeah, yeah. Mike did say that. He's like, oh darn, another triceratops. You find the frill. Like, oh dang.
Yeah, um, and surprisingly, even some of the more rare things really don't bring that much money. The only thing that really makes people go nuts is a T Rex,
Yeah, I
and
can
we've
see that.
seen that. Sue, when Sue sold back in what was it, the 90s,
Hmm.
that was like 7 or 8 million, and then Stan sold like a year or two ago. Was it 30 some million? It was crazy.
Yeah, I guess that's the rock star of it.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why
Everybody wants a T
trying to.
Rex.
That's why they're trying to suppress the knowledge that it didn't sound like that. So they really sound like a parrot. But yeah, the what as far as like maybe an individual bone, what would be like the most valuable sought after?
Once again, T-Rex tooth.
Here, yeah, T. It's like the megalodon. Everybody
Yeah,
that dies wants a megalodon too.
yeah, yeah. And the T-Rex teeth. The funny thing is, T-Rex teeth are not that uncommon.
Yeah, so I was going to ask. It was like it sounds like it'd be everywhere.
Yeah, they were constantly losing their teeth. Like all
Hmm.
dinosaurs would lose teeth and regrow teeth. Um, I mean, I probably just thinking off the top of my head, but I know I've at least found part of a T Rex teeth almost every year I go out. We've had people, um, we've had people in our group find three T Rex teeth in one season, which is usually only 2 weeks long.
Hmm.
Um, you know, if we find T Rex teeth, we turn them over to the rancher because the rancher will sell them, and then that could buy their cattle feed for the winter. So
That'll really buy you a lot of bucks with them ranchers too.
yeah,
So here's
yep,
the
oh yeah,
so T Rex. Yeah, I would think like you said they fall out everywhere. I would think that not only a T Rex tooth, but maybe like a T Rex itself would be more common, or maybe as common as a Triceratops. But
not quite, but I mean it's up there. Uh, T Rex is way more common than Ankylosaurus, like we talked
yeah,
about earlier. Those guys are really rare. It's definitely where we dig. It's Triceratops number one. Then it's Edmontosaurus, which is the big duck-billed dinosaur
yep.
that's out there. But really, not too far behind it is T Rex. And I've found, I wouldn't say lots, but I've found a pretty good number of individual T Rex bones. We've got
Hmm.
several here at the museum on display. We found one this summer on our dig. Unfortunately, it was in some pretty solid rock. And so we just put a cover over it, and we're going to have to go back with power tools next year.
Ooh, in a market. Hope nobody shows up and gets it.
Yeah. Well, the ranch owners are usually pretty good about monitoring people. And like at this ranch, you have to drive past the ranch house to get onto the back part of the ranch.
Okay,
So they're going to see anybody who's going on their property.
that's good because somebody sees like 200,000 or 300,000, not thousand, but 2 or 3,000 laying out there.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
And then I know that, yeah, once again, Mike with Paleo Prospectors, I know they've had
mhm.
an issue with people stealing fossils. Ranches that had, less 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 secure ways to get in
Mhm.
and out, and people will sneak onto the ranches and grab fossils and go.
I would think that would be a bigger deal than it actually is. Maybe it is, and I'm just I don't know anything about it. I would think that there would be like illegal middle of the night digs like everywhere out west, especially with everybody living everywhere else now. The migration.
Yeah, I haven't heard about it happening, super often. Just
Hmm.
every once in a while, I'll hear about something. Um, but yeah, it may even happen a lot more often than
Yeah.
we know. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's one of those things you have to have like a starting point. You can't just dig anywhere.
Right.
Just end up with a big square hole for no reason.
Yep. Yeah, that's actually one of the most common questions that I get here at the museum is how do you know where to dig? And I think most people assume that you just go and say, hey, this looks like a good spot, and just start digging a hole. Uh, and that's not how it works. You spend a lot of time just walking and looking. You'll find little bits of dinosaur bone. So you try and figure out where those little bits are coming from. So you
Hmm.
start working your way up the hill. And what you're really looking for is some dinosaur bone sticking out of the ground a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes it's actually sticking out the side of a hill. The first dinosaur bone I ever dug up was a Triceratops rib bone, and it was just almost at my eye level, just poking out of the hill just a little bit.
Hmm.
And so I started digging in, and it took me 3 days of tunneling into that hill to get to the other end of that bone. It's almost 4 feet long.
So it was a full rib bone then.
Pretty close.
Wasn't like a baby back. I mean, it was the whole
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
You'd use that thing as a spear. Was it intact or just?
It was in pretty good shape. The part the little hook that's the closest to the body,
Hmm.
that part was missing, but the main part of the rib went all the way down to the end.
It's always the hook. Have you heard about the Alaskan boneyard? The guy up there, he's got that 5 or 10 acres that he sprays with the gold digging hose, and he's getting all those ice age
Oh yeah,
artifacts
uh,
out of it.
yeah. I haven't heard about him, but I know they do that up in Russia, up in Siberia. They just get big fire
Hmm.
hoses and they're just spraying it down, washing the dirt away, and exposing all kinds of ice age stuff.
It's fresh too. Like he's eating some of the stuff he's found.
Yeah, I
Like
don't know that I would do that, but
I don't. Yeah, I was like, man, what made you just? Oh, look, there's some piece of an elephant. Let's eat it. Because we eat mammoth all the time. He went on Rogan and brought Rogan a whole bunch of fossils. Like I don't even know what he would do with them.
yeah, yeah, it's funny. Starting the museum, getting the fossils and filling the museum has been the easiest part of the whole thing. I have no
Really?
shortage of stuff to go on display. Yeah, we get stuff. Um, 2 days ago, somebody walked in and donated uh, two big plates of fossil fish from Wyoming. It's the
Hmm.
Southwest Wyoming, the Green River Formation. It's these kind of tan rocks that have the brown fish in them. They're kind of
Hmm.
all over the place. Um, yeah, he just brought in two giant plates of fish and donated them to us. And that kind of stuff happens a lot. There's a lot of people who, well, like this is what he does for a hobby: is he cleans those fish and then he wants to see them on display somewhere, so he donated to us. Or we have people whose grandfather was a rock collector, or
Hmm.
whose daughter had a gem collection, or something like that, and they're just looking for some place to put it because not everybody has the
Yeah.
same interest, and some people may have a huge collection of dinosaur bones, but their kids have no interest in it. So
That's weird how human nature works. Like you may not even be at all interested in the rocks or the fossils, but you know not to throw them away.
yeah,
Like you got this innate genetics to like we got to do something with them. We can't throw them away. They're fossils. They're rocks. They're pretty rocks. You have to have a pretty rock. I guess. Yeah. I guess your museum is the probably the best place. Something like that's the best place to keep them.
yeah. And the nice thing about us being a small museum and a pretty new museum is we will take it. I mean, you look at something like you know the Smithsonian or the
Hmm.
Field Museum in Chicago. They have millions and millions of things in their collections. So it's hard to get them to take stuff unless it's something that's really new or really special because they just don't have room anymore.
Imagine bringing the Smithsonian and Arrowhead. Like, where do you want to put it in the heap over
Yeah,
here in
pretty
the
much.
Arrowhead pile? Now, we have a several because we have some land here up on the mountains as well. It's it's basically they're the size of basketballs when you find them. They're sandstone for the most part, and I always call them coral, but they're just squares, and you can tell they're from the bottom of the ocean or something to that effect. It's like they're squares, just grids with like little squares inside of it. I can't think of what they're called,
That
but we
does
got a
sound like
bunch.
yeah, that does sound like a type of coral.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's fairly. I mean, that's this area around here. Everything in Middle Tennessee is a limestone. Um, it's kind of the joke when somebody is going to bring something in for us to identify. We say, well, it's going to be a limestone,
Yep.
and
It's always limestone.
yeah, and it's full of marine fossils, snail shells, clam shells,
Hmm.
crinoids, like we said. Um, Sometimes trilobites,
Yeah.
sometimes nautiloids, which are these big long shells, kind of like the chambered nautilus that's still in the ocean
Hmm.
today. Only instead of a straight shell, the modern one has a coiled shell. But yeah, it's full of fossils.
I would always find trilobites and fish and just giant clumps of clams.
Oh yeah,
You'd bust open. There's a type of limestone. It may not be, but it was yellowish, and it was kind of layered. You could just pop it, and it would just break at the seam, and the fossil would be in there.
oh yeah.
Anytime I don't know if it was a lichen on it or what, but it was always yellowish,
Hmm.
almost like it was made out of sulfur or something. It didn't smell funny. It seemed to always have something in it. Kind of like those guys that bust open those big river rocks and you always find the shells inside.
Oh yeah.
So, so how old is your museum up there? I've only
Well,
heard of it recently.
our museum is actually going to be turning 10 years old next month. September 14th is actually the day we opened almost 10 years ago. Kind of a roundabout way of getting a museum going, but
Hmm.
I moved to Tennessee in 2000, and I mean my thing has always been museums. I love museums. Anytime I go anywhere, I go to museums. Actually stopped at 3 museums between Montana and home on my trip back from Montana this year. And there's always more museums that I find out about and I haven't seen. And when
Hmm.
I moved to Tennessee, the first thing I was looking for was a natural history museum. I mean, come on, Nashville, Tennessee is a big enough city. They should have something.
I thought they
And
did.
they didn't. They
Oh,
have the closest they have is the Adventure Science Center.
yeah, I've been there.
Yeah. And apparently they used to have a few fossils, but they kind of remodeled, and all they had was a cast of a T-Rex and I think maybe a Triceratops skull. Just a T-Rex skull and a Triceratops skull, and that was pretty much it. And I mean
That's what I'm thinking about because we were just there like a few years ago.
and then the Frist Museum has some Egyptian stuff, which is kind of natural history as well.
Hmm.
But I kept looking around like, wow, how can there not be anything here? And I got hooked up with some of the local rock hounds, the fossil collectors and rock collectors. And we've got a local club, Middle Tennessee Gem and Mineral Society, a lot of jewelry makers in there too.
Hmm.
And I met a gentleman named Lewis Elrod, who was a mineral collector and a bit of a hoarder, and had just a ridiculous mineral collection. And we just got to talking how we wish there was a museum. And by this time, I had already been digging in Montana for 4 or 5 years. And so I started getting some dinosaur bones. And I had been collecting fossils my whole life too. So I was just thinking my fossils and Lewis's minerals, that's kind of enough to maybe get something started. And so we started kind of pooling our stuff and found our location that we're at now, which was office space in a large warehouse, but actually worked out pretty good for us. And we decided, hey, let's try it. We opened the doors. It was within the month, and I think it may have been the month before or maybe within the month after that we opened the doors. We heard about a T-Rex cast that was going to go up for sale. And it was an artist in St. Louis. He does paleo art. He makes big dinosaur statues. Mm-hmm. And he had got the cast behind me, and he got it unpainted, unfinished. So it was just basically a couple refrigerator boxes, like 4 of them, full of loose bones. And so he decided he was going to sell that. And we were able to jump on it. And Lewis bought the cast. And so that's how we got a T-Rex. And so the first year of the museum, basically we spent putting our T-Rex together because it took us 10 months to assemble it. And
That's cool.
Then we started getting people coming in the door, and like I said, filling the museum's been easy. People are bringing us stuff all the time. And so we keep adding and adding to our collections. We ran out of room probably 8 years ago, but we still managed to fit stuff in. We've got fossils.
That's pretty quick.
Fossils. Oh yeah. We've got fossils on top of fossils, fossils behind fossils. We got stuff packed into the space as tight as we can.
See, I was thinking that the full skeletons like that go on like a tour and stay at one place like 6 months and then move to like another museum.
There are some that do that.
Yeah.
Sue, when Sue was finished and put on display, the actual Sue is at the Field Museum, but they made I think it was 2 different casts of Sue, and those went on display to a bunch of different museums. They might still be on display or on tour somewhere, you know.
Hmm. I think they had one down in Birmingham not too long ago at the McWayne Center, which is basically the Adventure Center from same thing as Nashville. And I've been to that one, and I have been to that one in Nashville with the Mummy. But I was in like sixth grade, and I just unlocked a core memory when you said that. I forgot all about it.
Yeah.
I remember seeing the Mummy. I'm looking at the museum on the Google Earth right now. It's 111 miles away.
Yeah, yeah.
Not too far. I'm going to McMinnville on the 10th.
Oh, you're almost there.
I was gonna say there's a Bigfoot convention in McMinnville. I'm like, that's
Yeah,
almost,
I've been seeing the advertisements for that. Like I said, I've got a couple people here at the museum that are really into Bigfoot and some of the other cryptid stuff.
mm-hmm. As far as like podcasting goes, Bigfoot is my favorite subject, and I'm not just at the dinner table talking about it every day, but this is like my ultimate life and a career I'm pursuing. Like really hit me, but I can't talk about it all the time because I just burn out on it, and I run into some amazing people, and every once in a while I run into some absolutely insane people. I know that's hard to believe, but I love talking about it.
Yeah, we get our share here at the museum too. We get the people who bring in a funny shaped rock that they are convinced is a pair of petrified ducklings. If you squint really hard, maybe it looks a little bit like a duck, but they are absolutely convinced, and nothing you can tell them is going to change their mind.
Still has feathers on it.
Yeah.
Well, look, you can see the feathers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
How many people do you have bringing you in dinosaur eggs that they think is dinosaur eggs? That's what I think would be the most common.
It does happen. I would say probably about once a month.
Like that's a rock.
Yeah.
That's a square rock.
Yep. But we're always happy to look at every one because you never know. That one time that you say no, it may turn out that it really was something. Well, that's what happened with our Tennessee dinosaur bone. I got I got an email, I think it was, and it was a couple of girls who had gone out fossil hunting. It was their very first time fossil hunting ever, and they were in an area of the Coon Creek Formation that's not part of the actual Coon Creek Science Center because that's actually state land and you can't collect there, at least not the vertebrate stuff. And they said they found something and they couldn't figure out what it was. And I said, well, okay, send me a picture, assuming it's going to be a rock. And they sent me a picture and it was a bone. And I was really shocked. And my first instinct was, okay, well, Coon Creek, it could be a mosasaur.
Mm-hmm.
Mosasaur are kind of big. They're marine reptiles. They kind of look like crocodiles with flippers instead of feet. And they're fairly common marine animals during the time of the dinosaurs. But quick little bit of research, and I found out that, okay, this is like twice the size of the biggest mosasaur bone of that kind. So it can't be a mosasaur. And sent pictures to a couple other paleontologists, and everybody came back hadrosaur, hadrosaur, hadrosaur. So I sent it back to the girl and I said, you've got a dinosaur bone. And as far as I know, that's the first complete dinosaur bone that's ever been found in the state of Tennessee. They had found some chunks of dinosaur bone.
Mm-hmm.
The McClung Museum in Knoxville on UT's campus has those chunks. And they still, a little bit of question about those because they don't have the location it was actually found. They just suddenly realized they had dinosaur bones in their collection. And yeah, I'm still a little suspect on that, but I'm
suddenly.
But the girls gave me the location, the GPS. We've actually been to that site to look. We didn't find more dinosaur bones, but we did find sea turtle. So we're hoping to spend a little more time, maybe see what else we could find at that site. But yeah,
How big of a bone was it?
I would say it was just a little over a foot long,
Hmm.
and it's a bone called a chevron, which is the bone that comes down off of the tail. So on the
Okay.
tail, you've got the tail vertebrae, but then there's a bone, kind of a Y-shaped bone that drops down below that, and that's a chevron.
I thought you were
Might
going to say it
even
was
be able,
like a femur or something, like 2 foot
yeah,
long or something.
no, you might even be able to see them on the T Rex behind me, behind his leg. You can see where the tail starts. There's these
Hmm.
bones that are dropping down off the tail vertebrae. Those are separate bones, and yeah, those are the chevrons.
Okay. I've heard a lot of people talk about chevrons before. I never knew what they were talking about.
Yeah.
Just the people say they just found a couple chevrons. That was it. I'm like, wait, what? Like a gas station? Prehistoric
No, if it's
prehistoric
dinosaurs, it's got to
chevron?
be Sinclair's. So
Hmm. Have you ever been over to the Gobi Desert?
no, I have not done any collecting of fossils outside of the U.S. Uh,
You don't
I've,
really have to.
yeah, well, and a lot of other countries will have a lot stricter laws
Hmm.
about fossil collecting. Like I'd love to go up to Canada, but their laws are very, very strict. Basically, we wouldn't be able to collect anything up there.
Alberta's proud of them.
Yeah.
They got their worldwide status, and they're not turning loose of it.
Yep.
So those are our dinosaurs. That Gobi, that Gobi just fascinates me because it has like the alternate universe of our dinosaurs.
Oh yeah.
It's like the same thing but different.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they got their version of T Rex. They've got the actual velociraptors came
Hmm.
from the Gobi Desert. Um, yeah, just a whole slew of pretty interesting dinosaurs. The first, dinosaur eggs were found in the Gobi Desert.
Hmm.
Uh, that's something I think I would love to find
A nest.
someday. Even just eggshell pieces, because we dig in the Hill Creek Formation, which is the T Rex Triceratops at Montesaurus. Uh, Eggshells are almost unheard of in that formation for some reason.
Why do you think that is? It just seems like they're something more conducive to eggs, or is it because the Iraqis pushed everything up and exposed it instead of just being covered up land? Like that's the reason that Montana is so plentiful.
No, you would think you should be able to find them because
I would.
um, a little bit closer to the Rockies, the rocks get a little bit older as you get
Hmm.
there, and there is a formation that's probably like 3 or 4 formations below the Hell Creek Formation. It's called the Two Medicine Formation. The Two Medicine Formation is where Jack Horner got famous for finding baby dinosaurs. And they have eggshells all over that formation. I mean, I do have some eggshells from the Two Medicine Formation because, I mean, it's almost like the ground is covered with them in spots. And there they would nest in the same area year after year after year. So you would just build up layer upon layer upon layer of eggshells, and they're super common. Uh, but the conditions are not that different from the Two Medicine Formation to the Hell Creek Formation. So you would think there would be areas like
Hmm.
that for the Hell Creek Formation too. But we just haven't found any yet.
That means they're still out there. Just stay
Yep.
positive.
Well, that's the thing. Uh, some people ask why you would still go out. Haven't they found everything? And we we are finding more dinosaurs, more new dinosaurs every year now than any time in history. So there's new discoveries happening left and right all the time. Even in the Hell Creek Formation where we're digging, uh, there's all kinds of new discoveries and plenty of debate about old discoveries too. Like for example, the one of the big debates right now is T Rex um, or is Nanotyrannus its own dinosaur, or is it just a juvenile T Rex?
Hmm.
And there's been some pretty heated debates on that subject. Uh, Personally, I could go either way. We just need more. We need more specimens. We need more young T Rex specimens to be able to say for sure.
Like, do they think it might be a precursor to T Rex, or just a subspecies at the same time?
Just
Do
a
they think?
different species at the same time. Personally, I tend to probably fall a little bit more into the Nanotyrannus camp because, I mean, how many ecosystems today do we see where we have multiple size predators that are the
Mm-hmm.
same? You go to Africa, you've got lions, you've got cheetahs, you've got leopards. You go
Hyenas.
to, yeah, hyenas. But I mean, they're just all three of those were
Yeah.
cats. If you were just looking at the cat skeletons, would you be able to say that a cheetah was different enough? Well, cheetahs
Mm-mm.
probably would be, but a leopard and a lion, the lion's probably going to be about twice the size of the leopard. Is there going to be enough difference that you would be able to tell that it's a completely different animal and completely different lifestyle, all of that stuff?
Or a tiger. Like they're the same thing once its
Yep.
skin's off.
Yep. Or even here in the U.S., you've got brown bears and black bears. We don't have any brown bears or grizzly bears on our side of the country anymore, but out west they have both. And if you were looking at, a million years down the road and you're looking at fossils from the Rockies, would you be able to tell that black bears and brown bears were different species? Is there enough differences? So, that's kind of what I tend to think, that maybe Nanotyrannus might be a valid dinosaur, because there are differences between them, and at least bigger sized T-Rexes.
Yeah, it's if the morphology of what a T-Rex is, the what's that, a sauropod? A what's the
Theropod.
two-legged? Theropods, goodness. Sauropod's the brontosaurus.
Right.
Thinking backwards. Yeah, the morphology of a theropod could have gone in either way. Could be little ones. You got the compies, they're the same thing, just a little micro version.
Yeah, and there are smaller raptor dinosaurs in the Hell Creek Formation. Archaeoraptor, Dakota Raptor, and so you kind of got the smaller things, and then you got the bigger T-Rex without really something in the middle. And the T-Rex people argue that, well, T-Rex just filled that ecological niche when it was a juvenile, and then it filled a different ecological niche when it was an adult, which is possible, but kind of seems to me a little overcomplicating things.
I don't think there's anything right now that does that.
Yeah, the simpler explanation to me, is just they're two different dinosaurs. But I'm not going to say with 100% certainty, because we just don't have enough evidence to really go one way or the other.
I'm not getting my heart broken again after that Microceratops fiasco a few years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Two different species turned out to be one thing. There was, and on that same vein, there were so many species of humans living at the same time. Like, what was it, like 20 at one point?
So I haven't really researched too much on that, but yeah, there were at least, I mean, there's at least 3 or 4 that show up in our DNA. When they break down the DNA, they realize that there were other human species that interbred with the humans. I mean, even the Neanderthals, we've got a little bit of Neanderthal DNA in us.
And we've got Neanderthal and the Diovingians. What are they called? Yeah, I just talked about this last night with a school teacher. I can't think of the name anymore. We got just both of those hanging out. 1 or 2% of our own DNA.
Yeah, I think there's another one from Asia too, but I can't think of that.
Yeah.
But anyway,
where was the Oviraptor? Is that Gobi Desert?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Now there is an Oviraptor that was found in the Hell Creek Formation. It's called Anzu Wiley, and it was actually pretty big. I'm thinking close to 20 feet. So
that's bigger than a juvenile T-Rex.
Yeah. Yeah. So those guys are pretty cool. And I don't think they've been around that terribly long. I think they were discovered probably within the last 20 years. Yeah. So Hell Creek Formation is probably the most studied dinosaur formation on the planet, and they're still finding new dinosaurs in there. So, you
What's
know,
the one with the Dinosaur State Park, Dinosaur National Park, with that big wall of fossils?
yeah, they're sauropods. They're long necks.
Yeah.
I can't remember which particular one they are now off the top of my head, but it's. I'm pretty sure that's Morrison Formation, and there's so many different sauropods in the Morrison Formation. There's Apatosaurus and Diplodocus and Brachiosaurus, and yeah, so it could be any one of those.
See, in my mind, I feel like the sauropods would be more exciting to find than maybe a T Rex. Just, I don't know why, but
Possibly,
just to me, it feels like it is.
possibly more exciting, but definitely more work.
Yep.
I mean, when a single bone can be, you know, 7 feet long and weigh 400 pounds, that's a whole different ballgame. I mean, I've got a Edmontosaurus femur, and it was all we could do to get that out. Um, we had a stretcher that, like, you know, medical people would carry
Mm-hmm.
wounded on, and we had 8 people, and so 4 people would be carrying the stretcher, and when they got tired, the other 4 people would take it, and then when they got tired, we'd switch it back, and man, we were dead. We could barely move by the time we got back to the truck with that thing, and that's
Now,
probably only 200 pounds.
did you pack it up first with the paper mache, the plaster?
Yeah, plaster and burlap,
Mm-hmm.
and wrapped it up good.
That's what they
Yeah,
do with those giant sauropod femurs, because they got to lift them out with the dang helicopter half the time.
yeah, or a
Can't get
crane
them out.
or a loader of some kind. Yeah, yeah. I kind of want to go dig on some of those. Kind of don't want to go dig on some of those, just for the amount of work that it's going to be.
It seems like when you get around in the sauropod neighborhood or the areas where they're at, it's never like finding what's the word? Find them in where they look like they just died. There's a word for that, and you know it, and I don't. And the sauropods are just in a big pile, and you just find pieces of them instead of
Yeah,
just a whole one laid out like 300 yards of bones. You know?
yeah. Well, I've heard people liken that to when whales die and fall to the
Mm-hmm.
ocean floor,
Oh yeah.
and how there's a whole community of animals that come in and will live on that for like weeks at a time. It was probably the same thing when one of those
Mm-hmm.
big long necks died. They die, and yeah, all the scavengers from miles and miles around would come in, and even the predators too. You know, because no T Rex, whether you're in the T Rex as a predator or a scavenger camp,
Mm-hmm.
a predator T Rex is still not going to pass up a free meal. And if he sees a dead animal there, he's going to go take a couple bites out of it.
Man, I saw a video the other day on the Instagram account called Nature is Metal, which I recommend if you don't follow it.
Okay.
And it was covered up by Instagram. It said it's maybe too violent for your little eyes, and I'm like, get out of here. And so now let me see it, and it was like 6 lions inside of a giraffe.
Oh, yeah.
And so I can imagine how something, a giraffe comparable, kind of comparable to the size of that, as far as ratio goes, what it would look like with everything eating on this giant animal just laying there. Just 7 or 8 raptor size, allosaurus size animals sticking out of it with the little tails wagging as they're munching on the inside of the rib cage.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've before the museum, back when I actually could do stuff like Getaway, I've been to Kenya a couple of times, and I've been to a couple kills. There's a lion kill on a zebra, and it was the whole pride was just munching away on it, and the lion cubs were in there just kind of bouncing all over the place. That was pretty cool. And the other kill was, I think it probably just died of old age, but it was a hippo, and the hyenas were munching on it. And
So
yeah,
that'd be something like that where like a bunch of animals can come in all at once.
yep. Oh yeah. Well, both of those, there's, wherever the kill site is, in the background, you see there's dozens of vultures just kind of hanging out, waiting for their turn.
Mm-hmm.
There's jackals kind of roaming around, waiting for a chance to try and get in there and eat stuff. And other birds. I think the storks and yeah, yeah, it brings in everybody.
It's like when they open a Bucky's. Just
Yeah,
everybody just flocks around the thing. You're getting
yeah,
one up there, aren't you? You getting a
we're supposed
Bucky's?
to be getting one.
Just thought about that.
Yep. I don't know that they've made much progress on the construction yet, but we're supposed to be getting one.
That's not the one that burned down, is it? No, it was in Texas.
No.
The one in Texas burned to the ground. I've been sitting here searching this entire time in between talks about this Appalachiosaurus. I want to go see it. It's just in Cartersville.
Yeah.
It thought it had really long limbs. Apparently, that's not right.
Yeah. Yeah. Surprisingly, the number of arm bones from T-Rexes and T-Rex ancestors is very small. Our guy here, the T-Rex we have, we named our T-Rex Frank because every T-Rex needs a name. So Frank was one of the few T-Rexes that had a complete arm found. I can't remember now if it was the right or left, but it was pretty much the first complete arm on a T-Rex that had been found, and had an extra little bone, metacarpal 3. It's kind of famous for having that. They always show T-Rex with 2 fingers.
Mm-hmm.
They actually had kind of a third digit. It wasn't a true finger. So your carpals are the bones that are in your hand.
Mm-hmm.
So it had 3 metacarpals, but it didn't actually have 3 fingers. But this was the first.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do we think the arms are for? Were the wings like folded like an ostrich behind their back? I mean, it seemed kind of useless.
Well, I mean, everybody's got their own theory on the T-Rex arms. The funny thing is, T-Rex is what, 20, 30 times bigger than we are, probably even more than that. But a T-Rex arm is the same length as my arm. But the bones are 4 times bigger around. They're super thick. And based off of the size of the muscle attachment scars on these bones, they estimate that a T-Rex could curl 200 pounds in each arm.
Ooh.
So they must have had some use.
That's a lot. That's like a whole animal.
Yeah. So if they were useless things just hanging there, why are they so strong? So you got to start thinking maybe there's some kind of use for them. And I've heard all kinds of different things. Maybe it was involved in mating. A humorous one I remember from way back was a paleontologist decided that what happened was T-Rex would hold his head up high and he would run up and he would use his tiny arms to push a dinosaur over. And then once it was on the ground, then he would bite it and kill it. I think that's silly. But now there was one paper that I saw, and this is something that I tend to think might have some good possibilities. This guy was what's the word for it? He deals with the body and forces and stuff. Kinesiologist, I think, something like that.
Sports medicine kind of thing.
Yeah, kind of like that. But he was doing
kinesiology.
He was doing it on animals, and he's doing all these high-level calculations. And if a T-Rex was laying down on its stomach and it was going to stand up, if it used those arms to push off just to kind of help him get started, it like reduced the stress on his legs, like the joints in his legs, by like 30% or something. So it might have been something just as simple as it helped him stand up. And I mean, that's as good an explanation as any I've heard.
Mm-hmm. There's countless of them. I've heard all of those. I've never heard the pushover one yet. Before.
Yeah, that was a rather out there one, but I had to hang on to that one because that's just.
That sounds like something they would say in like 1760 or something.
Yeah,
1850s, like World's Fair Tesla time frame. So as far as your career goes, are you like a doctorate or master's in paleontology? Like
So I got a bachelor's and master's in geology.
geology?
Yep. And when I was in school, loved paleontology, did all the research in paleontology I could, took every paleontology class the university offered, was told the entire time in school that there are no jobs in paleontology. And so I kind of wanted a job. So that's why I didn't really, you know, focus on getting a master's in paleontology versus geology, or try and go for a PhD in paleontology. And so after I got my master's, I kind of put it away for a while. And I did environmental consulting work, environmental cleanup work for about 8 or 9 years. And then I got a job teaching at Middle Tennessee State University. So the PhD professors usually aren't that interested in teaching the intro classes. So I got hired as an instructor to just teach the intro classes. So that's what I do, is I teach introduction to earth science, lecture and lab classes. And it's a pretty good job. I mean, it beats having a real job. And once I started teaching, you have to have office hours, and nobody ever shows up to office hours. So I started getting back into researching paleontology, and my summers were off. So I started looking for, hey, maybe I can go get involved in some digs, and got invited to go to the dig to Montana. And that was pretty much it. It's funny because something that I completely forgot until I had started the museum, when I was in school and we were all sitting around, and this was right before I got my bachelor's degree, everybody was saying what their ideal job would be. And I had said working at a natural history museum would be my ideal job, and completely forgot about that until one of my college classmates came to see me at the museum and said, "Do you remember when you said that?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I did say that." So it took me a while, but eventually I got there. Just started my own museum.
So I'll go start I'll get my own hotel. Like you manifested a job in paleontology.
Yep.
So who needs a doctorate when you own a museum? I would say you're a paleontologist as much as any of them.
Yeah. Oh, I know tons and tons of paleontologists that don't have degrees in paleontology. I know we've brought him up a lot, but Michael Payne, if I have questions about paleontology, I'm going to go to Michael Payne before I go to a PhD, because Michael lives this every day. I mean, if he's not out in the field digging up dinosaurs, he's in his lab cleaning, gluing, preparing dinosaur bones. I mean, that's all he does. And if he's not doing that, he's reading about dinosaurs. So he knows more about dinosaurs than anybody else I know. And I know dinosaur or paleontologists with PhDs, but I'm still going to go to Mike first.
I think he's been cleaning up that Edmontosaurus femur you guys found for a while now. Isn't that? I think if I memory serves me right, you mentioned it earlier when you found this year.
Yeah. Yes. Well, it was supposed to be a whole skeleton, and then it just ended up being a femur. But yeah, he's been working on it for at least a year now.
I know he's been working on it since I've known him. Yeah. I just hit him up. I just hit him and cold called him a couple of years ago. And we talked forever. We still talk. I think I was going to message him today. See, I was like, is anything you know about this brown fella?
Yeah. Yeah, he's terrible.
Do not mention Parasaurolophus.
Oh.
Parasaurolophus.
Yeah. So anytime anybody starts arguing about dinosaur pronunciations, where it's Parasaurolophus, I always tell people I belong to the Bob Bacher School of Paleontology. Bob Bacher is a PhD paleontologist, pretty famous one. He notoriously makes up his own pronunciations for every dinosaurs, and he will not apologize for it. And so that's what you do. If you've got your pronunciation, And the other thing too, it always gets me. And I saw this. I don't remember where I saw this, but it might have just been a meme. That if somebody is really mispronouncing a dinosaur name, that probably means that they read it in a book and
Mhm.
someone didn't tell it to them. Well, if they read it in the book, they don't know what the proper pronunciation is. And so why are you getting on to them for that?
That's why I say it like I say it, because I learned it from a book when I was about 10 years old. And we in Fernbank over in Hotlanta
Yeah.
had a traveling Parasaurolophus museum or exhibit that year. And so I remember never being able to say it right. I still can't say it right. I can read it. Yeah, Parasaurolophus.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember I read a whole book about it. I used to have a little skeleton or a little bone from one. For a
Yeah.
time, it was my favorite.
That's another thing that it's kind of funny. I kind of walk the line between the academic side and the public side. Maybe I would have felt different if I did go for my PhD in paleontology, but I just don't understand how some of these PhD paleontologists are so against uh, selling of common fossils. You know, like you said, you have had a piece of a Parasaurolophus.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so so what?
Yeah.
You know, we can find chunks of dinosaur bone by the bucket full when we're out there in Montana. Probably going to be Triceratops. Why not let people have that? Because if you give that to, you know, a 6-year-old kid and he's got his piece of actual Triceratops fossil, that's going to ignite his interest and he's going to be excited about that. And that might stick with him for the rest of his life. He may end up going into science. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I little soapbox there, but
I, why wouldn't they want them to have them? That's like the first hit's free. That's the first rule of drug dealing.
yeah,
Hey, your first hit's free, man. I mean, hell, I'm 40 years old. I'll be 41 in 4 days. If you gave me a piece of Triceratops that big, I'd hug your neck.
yeah.
Triceratops?
It's I don't know. Sometimes I get the feeling it's just, well, if I can't play, I'm going to take my ball and go home. So
A little bit
you
of
know,
gatekeeping. Sounds like it.
yeah, oh yeah, very much so. I mean,
mean,
we've run into that a little bit with the museum because, you know, there's out west there are millions of acres of federal owned land. Um, and there is a permit process that you can go through to get permission to go and collect on the federal land. And we tried going through it, and it was probably, I don't know, 20 pages of paperwork and procedures and, yeah, junk and
red tape for days.
red tape. And so we submitted everything, and we were told, yeah, we're not going to give you a permit because you're too small. Not that we did anything wrong, not that we were violating any of their rules of red tape or anything. They said, no, you're just too small. So, yeah, how is a museum our size supposed to get anything to put on display then? We have to go.
This was for your actual museum you were going to go out there
yeah,
and do it for.
Yeah.
I thought you meant like you had a little, like the club you were in. So this is like.
No. This museum was turned down for a federal permit, even though we met every criteria they had.
What do you think you're going to do? Take too much?
I guess.
No, you're not big.
Yeah, very much gatekeeping with the paleontological academics.
I can just picture the type of people that would do that. Actually, like relax. There's a lot of that with every little community. I've got my little toe in now. The Bigfoot community, which I put my toe in, got right back out. Now I'm just a spectator again. Kind of go in and hang out with the folks sometimes, and there's gatekeeping in that too.
Yeah.
Not allowed to say one thing, and I don't know how far you have ever dove into that particular subject, but there's people that gatekeep their particular hypotheses. I'm like, what? There's zero evidence this thing even exists, and you're gatekeeping how it exists.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've heard some. Like I said, I've got a few people that are really into it. they kind of keep me updated on some of the latest news and gossip and some of those theories. Yeah, some of them are pretty
Oh,
out there.
it's incredible. I'll take every one of them face value. Just give it to. Just tell me anything. I believe it until you tell me the next thing. Do they work for the museum? The cryptid enthusiasts?
Yeah, yeah. I've got two of them that are pretty into it.
I may have to get them on here. See if we have to talk about that offline because I would love to have that little mixture because I had a anthropologist from Winnipeg who was doing his thesis on Neanderthal teeth, and he was had an interest in that just on the side. So anytime his museum got somebody throwing that subject matter, he'd be the one that went to it. Even though he was a skeptic, but he just liked the subject matter.
Right. Yeah.
So I love that mixture. Like scientists love letting their hair down a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Except for my last guest, Dr. Robin Hansen. He was towing that line, baby. He would not come off. He would not rabbit hole with me or anything. He was giving me his. He was friendly as he could be, but he wouldn't go chase rabbits with me. Like, all right, I'll just talk to you, man. Cool conversation. I really loved it. But I like to go off deep ends. I'm just go like we may be talking about, the favorite 4-wheeler you ride while on a dig at some point. Just
I'd love to get a 4-wheeler out there, but no, we're just on foot.
me and Denver Fowler got off on a conversation about cowboy hats for like 25 minutes. He said, I fancy a good cowboy hat. I didn't even know he was British. I was going to ask him about it. I have a little notes. I'm like, started talking about them. Should I ask a British person about cowboy hats? Because he's got quite the collection.
Yeah, I think he's been out west for a really long time.
He's honorary.
Yeah. Yeah,
I wanted to ask him.
He runs a really nice little museum
Mm-hmm.
In Dickinson, North Dakota. I love that little museum.
I would definitely, if I ever went out there, it'd be one of the places I would go.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Highly recommend that one.
But in your mind, you're like, oh, I'm just going to go to Bozeman and then Yellowstone and then Dickinson, North Dakota, and realize that's 4,000 miles.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's
there is nothing close in Montana. I mean, we don't think it's a big deal if something is 80 miles away. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll go there.
It's almost close to the same way here as far as being far away.
Yeah.
Because we're right dead center between Nashville and Birmingham. And any act I want to see, if it's in Nashville or Birmingham, we'll go to it. And thankfully, Huntsville is now the biggest city in Alabama, so we're starting to get recognized with some better acts, but still got to go Birmingham for most stuff.
Yeah. Actually, I went down to Huntsville for a concert a couple years ago. Black Jacket Symphony.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Was that at the Mars Theater in that little venue there? That's a neat little thing. My little see, I work on the base there in Huntsville where the Nazis were, and 4 or 5 years ago they were tearing down all the statues, the Confederate statues, and there was this mobs of people marching past buildings named after Nazis to tear down a Confederate statue.
Yeah,
like y'all, you missed one.
Yeah, I love the Space Center down there. I haven't been there for a while. I need to get back down there.
It's gotten better. It's when I was little, it was all condensed in that the first little spot.
Yeah,
right behind the SR-71 Blackbird, and now that's just where the local military-industrial complex advertises their newest stuff, and they have like a little kid theme thing in there. But now you go to the Davidson Center, it's Apollo from 300 yards of Apollo.
Oh yeah,
I love
it. Yeah, I've been there since they added that. That was really good. Actually, we were lucky enough to catch a tour by our tour guide was the son of somebody who had worked on the Apollo mission and had grown up there and lived there his whole life, and he had so much extra knowledge about all that stuff. It was great.
That's a whole other world.
Yeah, I'd love to get some more space stuff here. We have a meteorite collection. That's about as much space as we have at the moment.
Really? How big is it? You got a meteorite? Just like
it's little pieces, but we probably have close to 50 things in the display case. Um, Probably the no, I got stuff bigger than that. I was going to say the biggest stuff we have is golf ball size, but I've got a few slices that are probably getting like cantaloupe size, but then sliced thin.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I've got meteorites from all over the world. I've got some pretty rare runs. Um, I've got a piece of the meteorite that is the only known fatality from a meteorite.
I thought you were going to say that fat lady down in Alabama that got hit.
No,
And she lived.
yep. This was a cow, and it was in South America. But it was a doctor who was also a farmer. In the middle of the night, heard this extremely loud explosion, and it lit up the sky. And they went out the next morning and were looking around, and it had just went right through the back of this cow's head.
Man, like an execution style.
Yep. And
They
so,
must have been sailing.
yep. So that's pretty cool. There aren't too many pieces of that one around. And I've also got a piece of the meteorite that's at the American Museum of Natural History, Willamette. It's a giant one. It's like the size of a Volkswagen, but I've got a little slice of it.
Oh, that's cool. Because the irony is not lost on me that you said you the only known fatality for a meteorite with a T-Rex behind you.
Yeah.
Except for all of those. I guess it didn't hit it, though. I guess they got the after effect.
Yeah, probably didn't hit this guy, but yeah, there's supposedly there is the KT boundary. I'm sorry, now they call it the KPG. I still call it KT boundary. Somewhere on the ranch that we go to, and someday I'd like to try and find that, get some pieces of it.
Of the actual rock itself?
Well, no, just where it's going to be a paper thin layer, but it's going to have increased
glass.
Yeah, increased iridium elements in it, and it's going to have maybe some micro tektites in it and stuff. Is it blasted enough that it kind of covered half the planet with at least a thin layer of something.
Mm-hmm. I thought you were about to say nuclear glass.
No.
I guess that would be closer to it.
I've got some of that too. They call it trinitite,
Mm-hmm.
and when they did the
Trinity bomb.
Yeah, the Trinity bomb, it fused a lot of the desert into pieces of glass, and people used to go out and collect that before they realized that, hey, it might be radioactive.
I was going to say that I think it'll be something you keep in your pocket.
Yeah, that's another
lucky.
Cool, yeah, that's another cool thing we have here at the museum is we've actually got a whole display of radioactive stuff. We've got a lot of natural minerals that contain enough uranium in them that they're radioactive.
Now, do you have anything there like local wildlife exhibits? There's one down here in Anniston or Decatur, Cook's Natural History Museum, and it has just like you walk through like a little exhibit of local wildlife, and I always think that's cool because you forget some of the animals we have here.
Yeah, not specifically just local stuff, but we recently added two. We always had some stuff, but we have an animal skull collection for modern animals.
I like it.
And we've got a lot of local stuff, deer, coyotes, fox, beaver, all the ordinary possums, stuff like that. But I've got some pretty cool stuff too. Once again, some of the coolest stuff. One day, random person walks into the museum, an older gentleman, and says, "Would you like a skull collection?" And the answer is always yes.
Yes.
And it's crazy because he bought most of his stuff. Good thing is he's got records of where he bought all of the skulls, because he bought most of them in Europe in like the 60s, 70s, maybe some into the 80s. Which is a really good thing because some of those skulls we would not be able to purchase today. And probably if we weren't a nonprofit museum with educational reasons, be able to even own. We have a gorilla skull.
Oh, yeah. Did you have to go through anything to keep that, even though he did have the receipts?
No, I did some research just to make sure. And since we are a nonprofit and basically the stuff in our collections is considered in the public trust, it's now okay. But yeah, we would never be able to, we couldn't sell that. We couldn't give that away. That is permanently part of this museum, which is still awesome. I mean, and there's other cool stuff. I think there was a baboon and leopard.
It's like having a bald eagle feather.
Yeah.
A gorilla skull.
Yeah. The average person can't really touch a bald eagle feather, but yeah. Go ahead.
Is it just all animal related, or like geology, animal related, or is it any humans, like archaeological kind of things?
We do. So yeah, we've always had a small collection of Native American artifacts, mostly arrowhead points that people have donated. We did get an now I can't say words. An archaeological collection. The archaeologist who did the investigation of the area that became Nickajack Lake near Chattanooga when they built the dam and it flooded. He went through and inventoried and collected a whole lot of stuff, even wrote a book about it. That's been donated to our museum. So once again, a lot of arrowheads, but also pottery, other tools, things like that.
That's over there, bro, where I grew up.
Yep.
Just across the, I grew up on Lake Gunnersville, which is the next dam over from Nickajack.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my grandfather collected arrowheads his entire life, and he's got 4 or 5 giant cases of them, and we don't want to get rid of them, but like, what do you do with them? You just, it's like real tomahawks and all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do with these things? And he did it before it was illegal to dig.
Right.
Like with a shovel and a sieve on these islands out there. Whenever they built the, I say when they built the Tennessee River, when they built the lakes down there, Roosevelt, those islands all had them on there. Everybody did it. Now the crackheads or the meth heads are the only ones that do it, so they can go find enough arrowheads to buy their pills. And there's a cave on Nickajack, and the fella got trapped in it back in the 90s, and it was. This is off topic as shit, and it may just be me reminding myself, but he got up in there and got stuck and almost died. And right before he died, the TVA lowered the water, and they got in there and got him. And he had this story about meeting Jesus and angels and everything. So I think he was almost dead. But I remember when I was that age, it scared the living hell out of me.
Yeah,
to hear that. And I found that interview on YouTube like 5 years ago, and I may try to reach out to him. And I'm thinking about it.
There's kind of a similar story with the cave in McMinnville, Cumberland Caverns.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, about a guy getting trapped there. Didn't quite, get that bad, but his lantern broke and he had no way. He didn't have any backup lantern, and he was about to give up. And they came in and found him. And they said that his hair turned white from that experience and stayed white the rest of his life. And he kind of sounded like he had PTSD the rest of his life as well.
I imagine so. That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. Because, I mean, they, in a lot of caves, them included, they'll get you to a certain point and then they'll turn out all the lights. And yeah, that's darker than dark.
Yeah, the cathedral caverns. Yeah, they'll turn it off for like 35 seconds.
Yeah.
My middle daughter won't go in these hills anymore. She won't go on cave tours because of that. I said, there's a rail right beside you that walks all the way out. She said, no, how do you find it? I said, put your hand on it. I said, everybody in that room had a cell phone. You just turn the light on. She was tripping out.
Yep. Speaking of caves, some of the things I found out since we've started the museum, there's been some pretty amazing fossil finds in caves here in Tennessee, and none of them are in Tennessee anymore. Like there was a giant ground sloth nearly complete skeleton that was found in a cave over in East Tennessee, and that's at a museum in Pennsylvania. And there was a North American leopard or jaguar, it must be a jaguar, North American jaguar skeleton that was found in a cave in Middle Tennessee, and I think that went to the Smithsonian.
How'd they let the ground sloth get away? That's a hefty find there. This thing's big as an elephant.
Yeah, but it was found like in the 30s. And
yeah, there wasn't anywhere to put it around here then.
Right.
Place was still all shotgun shacks.
Still hoping, the next one might actually stay here in Tennessee with us.
I would hope so, because Tennessee's got pride similar to Texas in a lot of ways. So you would think they want to get their ground sloth back.
Yeah, I actually contacted them just to talk to them a little bit about it. It's been in their museum for almost 100 years, so they're not gonna repatriate it anytime soon. But they did say if we ever wanted to come up and 3D scan it and then print our own copy of it, which that might be something to look at in the future.
Now, do they have it out? Like doing?
Yeah, it's on display. Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like it's a pretty big one, like 10 feet tall and pretty hefty.
That's one of the things from up there at the boneyard in Alaska. Just they find ground sloths and the wolves. I couldn't imagine just being like a regular garden variety cave person just walking up on a ground sloth.
Yeah, I know. Those things are just so crazy. And then when you see their skeletons, their bones are so thick. I mean, like their femur, the upper leg bone, it may only be, 2 feet long, but it's probably, 2 feet around as well. It's just gigantic.
Heck, that could have been what the whole Bigfoot mystery was. They think the wild man's just a ground sloth.
Oh, yeah.
Since they stand up. I wonder. It's things like that, and 850. I guess we can start winding her down, but I always ask about, the Triceratops had no ancestors or descendants. They stopped at the KPG, or whatever it's called now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, how in the world does a chameleon look just like a Triceratops? And you always hear that maybe that morphology is just good for whatever the niche is in their environment. But man, they got a frill, they got 3 horns, but they're not related whatsoever. And it's just like, is this ground sloth anything? I know dinosaurs weren't mammals.
Yeah, the ground sloth looks, a lot like a bear, even though they're not related to each other. Yeah, it's. You see it over and over again when you start looking at enough fossils. If you look at dolphins, sharks, and ichthyosaurs, they all have the exact same body style, but one is a mammal, one is a fish, and one is a marine reptile. And sharks were around, hundreds of millions of years before any of them, and still around today. So obviously it's a good body style. So things that come along later on tend to gravitate towards that same body style. The other one you hear about, and I can't think of the good examples off the top of my head, but it said everything wants to turn into a crab eventually. So you've got, crabs and insects and spiders, and they all kind of essentially end up kind of looking the same.
Scorpions and crawdads and lobsters are all like the same thing.
Yeah.
It's almost like there's like engineering going on.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes. Like they all like New Zealand, the birds take over all the niches.
Yeah.
And so they all kind of act like the same, but they only have like 2 legs.
Yeah. It's funny. It just popped into my head, but it's kind of like that with cars. cars all
Yeah.
end up looking the same after a while. You know,
Just
like
what
all of the
makes
cars,
it go.
all the cars in the 50s, they all look kind of similar. Then, you know, they changed it, and then all the cars in the 80s looked ugly, but they all look the same ugly. And now you go out and, you know, half the time if you see a car, it's really hard to tell what it is because they all look so similar, especially like the hatchback cars, the small, what do they call them?
Mm-hmm.
They're not SUVs, are they? Anyway, but
The hatchbacks, or like a Subaru, or like a
yeah,
Mini
yeah,
Cooper?
like a Subaru hatchback. Yeah, like everybody makes one of those now. There's the
Crossovers.
Nissan Rogue. Yeah, crossover. That's it. Yeah, I mean, what car company doesn't make a crossover now? They all look the
The
same.
Nissan Road, the Ford Edge,
Yeah,
the Toyota not Forerunner, but RAV4.
yeah,
It's all like the same. It's just basically aerodynamics, based engineering at the time. It just goes that way. Like the 50s, no one cared about aerodynamics. They just wanted large, giant boats
yep,
with big motors in them.
yep, and big curves. They love big
Yep.
curves around the fenders and curved windshields and
And fit 8 people in them.
oh yeah, yeah. When I was in my early college days, I got a '67 Buick LeSabre convertible, and we comfortably fit 12 people in that car.
So you could live in one of those.
Yep.
67 Buick LeSabre. That's bigger than my truck, and I have a Tundra.
Yeah.
I bet I could look that up.
It was a boat. I think I measured one time, and the rear fender was over 6 feet long.
My goodness, I'm looking at him now. There's a lady on the hood. There's still 10 more feet of car behind her.
Yep.
That's like the Addams Family car or the Blues Brothers car.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was. Well, we can go ahead and land the ship. But do you got anything you want to hawk? Anything you want to promote your museum?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So if any of the listeners, anybody in the Middle Tennessee area, we're in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. The museum is called Earth Experience, the Middle Tennessee Museum of Natural History. We are open year-round, Wednesday through Saturday. Over the summer, we do Monday through Saturday. And yeah, just look us up, come find us, and come see some cool stuff. We've got real dinosaur bones. We've got local fossils. We've got rocks, minerals, crystals, Native American artifacts, a huge modern animal skull collection, and a little T-Rex that you can say hi to.
And a T-Rex. And there's a White Castle not far. I think it's still there.
Actually, I think the White Castle might have closed.
No. There'll be a Buc-ee's. There'll be a Buc-ee's soon.
Yeah, there will be a Buc-ee's soon. And not far away. It's only like the next exit down.
Now, the reason I mentioned the White Castle is in 2011, we had like the generational tornado outbreak here, and we didn't have any power. So we ended up going to Murfreesboro to buy some gas and some food, and ate at that White Castle. I'll never forget it. I said it's the best food I've had because we were just eating leftovers that were thawing out in the fridge for 2 or 3 days. I bet I ate 15 of them things. They're still in my belly. I mean, I'm still processing them. Been 13 years.
Yep.
I'd like to come up there and do like a mini documentary on that place, honestly, now I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, come on up. Shoot some film. Always happy. A couple months ago, actually had somebody come up here with a drone and flew his drone through the museum.
Really? And, but that was fun.
Yep. So that's on it's on the museum's Facebook page. You can find the link for that. But that was really cool.
Don't hit the meteorites. I knew that. A natural history museum like that, it's one of those kind of things where stuff's kind of tough and you can't really break them unless you really try.
Yeah, some of the stuff, yeah. And surprisingly, yeah, a lot of the stuff people expect would be super fragile is actually pretty strong. And then some of the stuff they think is kind of indestructible actually breaks really easy.
I couldn't have the patience to deal with people touching things in a museum. Like, dude, it doesn't matter how sturdy it is. You don't touch things in a museum.
Yeah. Well,
It's
we
not a
we
park.
have just for those people though, we do have stuff in every room that says "touch me." So there is stuff that they're supposed to touch. Of course,
Now, do you have?
will try and touch the stuff they're not supposed to
Oh
touch.
yeah. Now, do you have the little box of sand with the fake fossils in the bottom for the kids to dig in?
No, no. We had a different kind of sandbox that had like a 3D projection on it, and we just got tired of cleaning up sand everywhere every day, so we put that away.
Yeah, it's the one that looks like a topo map.
Yeah,
Those are
we
weird.
still have one of that. We'll bring it out for private events when we.
You ended up having kinetic sand in places you didn't want kinetic sand.
Yep.
Like, what's there kinetic sand over here? All right, Alan, I'll let you go. And this has been a fun conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I now want to go to Murfreesboro more than ever, and I may have to finesse the Bigfoot trip into this. Maybe a twofer.
Yeah, it's not that far away.
It's not. I thought it was closer than 100 miles, but 100 miles on 65 is different than 100 miles up country road. That's like less than. It's over an hour. I can do 80.
Yeah.
I can stop by 2 Buc-ee's. Like 2 Buc-ee's, 1 dinosaur trip. I can just go ahead and go on to the great beyond after that because I have nothing else to live for.
There's always more dinosaur museums. There's a lot of them out there.
I need to go to the Chicago one because my kids have been, but I haven't.
Oh, yeah.
And that's like the big
Chicago
boy.
is definitely worth it. Yes. Yeah. That one, you can't see everything in a day.
Mm-hmm. I've been to the Smithsonian. I've been to the Museum of the Rockies, but I've never been to the, what's it called? The Hood Museum? Chicago?
Field
Museum.
Yeah.
Probably shouldn't have called it Chicago the Hood Museum. Probably gonna get canceled for that one. But I didn't mean. That's what I was actually sincere thinking that's what it's called. Oh yeah. All right. But once again I'll let you go and we'll hit that theme music and we'll talk to you later. And this is not the last you'll see of me.
All right.
Peace out, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yep. Thank you.
All right.
I never didn't believe in Bigfoot. I never believed in it, I didn't believe in it. I never gave it any thought.
They kept wood knocking back and forth to each other, and it was in a pattern.
Barn owls don't typically throw rocks.
I come across these tracks.
Sasquatch is still not on my mind.